I know that was a bad pour. I just got overexcited. Oh, you probably can't see. I have to just wait for this. Okay. Can you read it? It says the star drops the loon, like from Stardew Valley. Because the Jojo cup didn't really make sense. Right, to drink beer out of. So I bought this. Cheers. Hello and welcome or welcome back to my self-titled YouTube channel. I am the eponymous Fiona, and this is part 2 of the Shane video. The Shane saga. The Shaga. Phase Shane of the channel. If you have not seen part 1 of the Shane video, that is entirely understandable. It's 4 hours. You're probably a person with a lot of stuff going on in your life. You know, you seem important, right? So I don't take it personally, you know, it's fine. But I don't think you need to have watched part 1 to see part 2. Part 1 was basically info dumping, everything that there is to know about that guy, that's Shane, if you don't know, from Stardew Valley, right? This little guy right here, Shane Stardew Valley, 2016. I've only got so many hands before we start to progress through the hearts with him. Full disclosure, I realised like 2 weeks after I put the video out that I forgot to include his Ginger Island dialogue and his cinema dialogue. So, my bad. There was a lot to cover. We will be circling back to that in part 3. Today, part 2, we will be covering Shane's backstory. What backstory? You may ask. Exactly. Good question. It's vague, but it exists. And you may have a follow-up question. You may think, how are you going to talk about the vague backstory of one fictional character for 2 hours, Fiona? And if that's a real question that you actually have, babes, you don't know me at all. You don't know me at all. You don't. What kind of relationship do we have? Trust me. God. So please join me, right? Please join me for the deepest dive into Shane from Stardew Valley Part 2, Backstory Edition, where we will try our best. Okay, we'll try our best. That's all we can do. My strategy here is going to be to look at the facts, the cold, hard facts. There's a lot of speculation about Shane's backstory. There's a lot of things that have become fanon, aka fan canon. And you might think that they're canon because you've seen them so much, because people talk about these things as if they're facts. But I am going to look strictly at the game, at the canon information, and we will speculate wildly from there. I do love whimsy, okay? I do. I can be whimsical. I love a headcanon. I love to speculate wildly. But you come to me for a reason, okay? My persistent autistic thoroughness. So I need my facts. I need them. I want them. I must have them. We are going to try our best to be clear and organised, to lay out the backstory of this man in sections without getting distracted or pulled off in different directions. No tangents. And that's not foreshadowing at all. No, I don't even know what that is. Is it some kind of literary device? I don't know. Toss and turn, I can't sleep at night. He's got all this backstory that we will just never know and that I will speculate wildly about. Right. Do you like my chains? My wall of Shane. This isn't here normally. No, where would it be? So these are my Shanes. These aren't official Shanes. A lot of these are fan art Shanes. I got permission for all of these Shanes. Let me show you the ones that I drew. We know this one from the last video. Yeah, I drew that one. I drew this one. Slav Squat Shane. I made that meme. Is that it? Oh, I made this meme as well. Don't know if you can even see that. Maybe it's just for me. These ones are fan art. This one, that's me. And that's me making out with him. Thanks, Gino. Okay, first, let's establish our current knowns. Our cold, hard facts. Shane lives at Marnie's ranch in Cindersap Forest with Marnie and Jazz. The Stardew Valley wiki, as well as the official guidebook, label Marnie as his aunt and Jazz as his goddaughter. This is backed up by evidence from the game. Marnie has a line of dialogue. My nephew Shane has been staying at my place the last few months. He helps me out with the chickens, so I'm not complaining. At 10 hearts, Jazz says to you, Did you know Shane's my godfather? He was a friend of my parents. They died. Shane says, if you want to get on my aunt's good side, give her things she likes. I gave it to her one year and she wouldn't stop talking about it. We can also confirm this by looking at Jazz and Marnie in the guidebook. It states that Shane is Marnie's nephew and Jazz's godfather. Great. Great. So look at these cold, hard facts. Can you read that okay? Can you read that okay? Chat? Yeah? Yeah. I think you can read that okay. Such a fucking bummer if you can't. Okay, I checked the footage. I think we're good. Fuck. All right. Let's do it. So these are our cold hard facts. Jazz is Shane's goddaughter. Marnie is Shane's aunt. Undeniable. Undeniable. Next, the living situation. So Shane and Jazz both live with Marnie. Shane tells you that he's renting his room. I'm renting my room from Marnie at a really good price. It's small, but I can't complain. And Marnie tells you in that line that we just went over that he's been staying with her for a few months and helps out with the chickens. So here's another fact. He rents a room at Marnie's house, he pays her for it, and he also helps out with the chickens. And they both say something about not complaining, which is interesting, but that's subjective. So we're going to come back to that later. While we're on the subject of Shane's family, he tells you at 8 Hearts, I guess I've grown attached to Marnie and Jazz. We're a ragtag bunch, but it kind of feels like a weird family. I never really had much of a family as a kid. This is the face he makes. Wait, is that still in the frame? This is the face he makes when he says that. Did I do it? So he never really had much of a family as a kid. What does this say? We don't know. We can't say for sure. It could mean a lot of things, but we will make note of it. One of his event dialogue lines is also interesting. So he says at the luau, wow, you don't get hot pepper chutney like this in the big city. So this tells us he spent some amount of time in the big city. Which city? How much time? Again, we don't know. We can't say, but we make note. He also has a line of dialogue at the Desert Festival. I came here once when I was a kid. The only thing I remember is getting sick on the bus ride. And it's interesting he says he came here once. Only one time. So this kind of reinforces this idea that he's lived somewhere that's not Stardew Valley. Jumping ahead in his timeline to when you're married, he says, if only. I was just thinking back on the glory days when I played gridball on the varsity team. Now I'm old and weak though. So varsity, as far as I've learned from Americans, means high school. So this is another fact we can establish. Finally, if we return to that line of Jazz's where she states that he's her godfather, she says that he was a friend of her parents and they died. Dead friends. Backstory. So in terms of the actual game, Stardew Valley 2016, these are all of the crumbs of information about his backstory. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Crumbs, Eric. But if we look at the official Stardew Valley graphic novel, we can see this panel. This is Shane holding an application to Jojamart, and there are 2 things weighing on him, debts and work. So the visual metaphor is quite straightforward. These things are crushing him, which leads him to apply for the job. In the timeline of the graphic novel, this happened in fall, and then the following spring is when the farmer arrives. But the timeline of everything is like a butt fuck in itself. So we're just going to write what we know. Okay, so there's a lot more dialogue from Shane. Obviously, there's a lot more dialogue we're going to talk about. But in terms of pure facts, cold, hard facts about his backstory, this is all that we have. This is the most canon compliant backstory we have. So what are our facts? He spent time in a big city. He rents a room at Marnie's ranch, pays in money and chicken labour. This has been the situation for a few months. Visited the Desert Festival once as a kid, therefore he's also been to the Valley at least once. Jazz is Shane's goddaughter. Marnie is Shane's aunt. In high school, Shane played varsity gridball. He has/had debts that motivated him to work at Joja. Never really had much of a family as a kid. Had 2 friends, Jazz's parents, who died. Okay. So we look at these cold hard facts, these CHFs, and we can start to kind of sketch together a picture, right? If he never really had much of a family as a kid, that kind of implies that he didn't have much of a relationship with Marnie, seeing as she's his aunt. So it would make sense if he grew up in a city away from her. At some point, he makes these two friends, Jazz's parents, they die, and he's the godfather. So he becomes responsible for her. He accumulates debts, whether that's over time or it's from trying to support Jazz. Then he moves in with Marnie, brings Jazz with him, with the benefit of cheap rent and free childcare. He gets the job at Joja to try to clear some debts, and this move happened, as Marnie says, a few months ago. You with me? We're making sense. We're making perfect sense. This is going better than expected, if I'm being honest. You know how I was saying that it's impossible to build some kind of conclusive picture and the timeline is all messed up and I was struggling with this. It just seems to be coming together so well. One more thing. One more cold hard fact. Secret note number 11.
What the hell is Day Bao Bao? Day Bao Bao.
Can we talk about secret note number 11, please? I've been dying to talk about secret note number 11 with you all day. Secret note number 11 is not a note at all. It's a picture. It's a Polaroid. Look at it. Right? We all had a good look? Yep. Cool. So I guess this doesn't count as a cold hard fact, right? Because we can't say with absolute unequivocal certainty that that is Jazz and that is Marnie. But like, let's be fucking for real right now. That is Jazz and that is Marnie. Jazz has a bow. Jazz has this black triangle-shaped kind of hair. And Marnie's sprite, I'll put it next to it. Parts of it are the exact same. The parting, the fringe. She looks different. She looks thinner. She's wearing like an 80s kind of outfit. So my interpretation, this is supposed to be like the past, you know, younger Marnie. And also there's the fact that most of the picture is black and white. It's like old vibes. So I know it's not 100% cold hard fact, but like common sense. That's fucking Jazz and Marnie, right? So Jazz looks like a fucking baby here. If you go into Penny's room, there is a book titled Teacher's Guidebook 2nd Grade. Penny is Jazz's teacher. The 2nd grade covers ages 7 and 8. So Jazz, as we know her, 7 or 8. And here in this picture, she's clearly meant to be like a toddler. She's tiny. She's wearing like a little onesie. So if she's a toddler, but now she's like 7 or 8, this means this picture was from like 5 or 6 years ago. If that is Jazz, which I'm like 99% sure that it is. So in our previously, you know, our nice established narrative that we were working on, there would be no reason for Jazz and Marnie to meet before Shane moved in to Marnie's house a few months ago. Shane lived in the city. He had these two friends. They had a kid. Jazz should, to Marnie, be nothing, nobody, before the point where he moves in. Shane is Marnie's nephew, so she has a sibling, the sibling has a kid, that's Shane. And then he has friends, and then they have a kid. So between Jazz and Marnie, that's like 6 degrees of separation. So why, 5 years ago, when Jazz was a baby, and Shane did not live here, and Jazz's parents perhaps were still alive, was Marnie taking a picture here in Stardew Valley with her nephew's friend's kid? We've already established that Marnie and Shane can't have had much of a relationship previously because he never really had much of a family as a kid. We know he went to the Desert Festival once, so he did spend some time in Stardew Valley as a kid, but the fact that it was only once implies like a half-hearted effort that was quickly abandoned. They both, when talking about this living situation, also say that they can't complain, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a person you really care about and are like super close to. The framing is that this living situation kind of sucks for both of them, but they realize that it could be worse, so they can't complain. So why 5 years ago would he come and visit and also bring his friend's baby? It doesn't even seem like they have a good enough relationship for him to visit her himself. If Shane is related to Marnie and Jazz is his goddaughter, and they only moved here a few months ago, then that would have been the first time that Jazz and Marnie ever met, a few months ago. Why on God's green earth is there a picture of Marnie and this toddler that she has no relation to. Day bow bow. Okay, the obvious answer to this is that they do have a relation. That Marnie is Jazz's aunt. Jazz does refer to her as Marnie. Marnie? Jazz does refer to her as Aunt Marnie, after all. And if we check the guidebook, it refers to Jazz as Marnie's niece and Marnie as Jazz's aunt. So all three of them, what if all three of them are related? Because we've established that Shane and Marnie are aunt and nephew. So if Jazz was related to Marnie, then by proxy, Shane is also related to Jazz. And this kind of works because Jazz also has purple hair, right? You can kind of see the relation there. Jazz also has these strong fucking eyebrows that seem to run in the family. But you know what? Do you know what happens if Jazz and Shane both have an Aunt Marnie? Do you know what happens if we take that literally? Do you know what happens if you share an aunt with someone? Do you know what you are? Cousins. Or siblings. Siblings or cousins. If the wiki is right, and Jazz is her niece, and Shane is her nephew, then they're cousins. But no, they're not cousins. Jazz is his goddaughter, and he could be both her cousin and her godfather, but they don't mention the cousin thing once. And why would there be the justification for why he's her godfather that her parents died? It would just be like, yeah, he's my cousin, and he's my godfather. They wouldn't need to justify it. Furthermore, if they both have an Aunt Marnie, then that means that Jazz's parents were also related to Shane. One of them at least, because they were related to Marnie. Okay, we're going to try and build a family tree. This is getting too much. I'm going to try and build a family tree. Bear with me.
This baby will be related to Michael through delusion.
Okay, so if Shane is Marnie's nephew, which he is, that means that one of his parents was her sibling, right? Cool. Fine. If Jazz is Marnie's niece, then that means one of her parents was also Marnie's sibling, right? And Jazz's parents died. So Marnie lost her sibling and her sibling's partner. These people died. Not only does she never mention this, but wouldn't it make 1,000 times more sense, if this were true, to make Marnie the godmother? Because in this family tree, this would also be a nephew situation, right? So why would they choose him, their unemployed nephew, to look after their child, instead of the sibling who has a ranch, who is older, you know? She has a house, she has a business. Doesn't make any fucking sense. I mean, you can choose a godmother and a godfather, so maybe they did both, but that's never mentioned. They don't say that, they say it's aunt and niece. And you could argue that Jazz calling Marnie Aunt Marnie is an informal thing, right? Family friend vibes. I'm gonna be my friend's kid's aunt, and we're not related. But why? If that's the case, does this picture exist? If they aren't related, as was the original assumption, if we take away this, what is linking these two people? Nothing. Only Shane. And Shane moved in a few months ago. So why does this picture exist? And you could say, that's not Marnie. That's Marnie's sister. And Marnie's sister is Jazz's mum, so it looks a lot like Marnie. But then all that does is re-establish this. And we have the same problems. We have the exact same problems. Furthermore, if they are both related to Marnie, why do they look way more like each other than they do like Marnie? The lip, the purple hair, the eyebrows. You could say it's a siblings by marriage sort of thing, right? these sibling ties, I need to write that back. These sibling ties don't need to be biological. It could be like sibling in law, right? Maybe, yeah, this one is a biological connection, but then this one, Marnie was married at some point, her spouse had a sibling, and that's one of Jazz's parents. So Shane and Jazz aren't related because there's no biology there, right? This is all blood related. This isn't. But again, they look like each other. Marnie doesn't look like either of them. And we would have to assume that Marnie had been married at some point, and there is no mention of that. Ever. That's just entirely made up. Right? We have come so far from our cold hard facts if we're saying that that's true. Furthermore, in his 8-heart scene, Jazz refers to Shane as Uncle Shane, which if he's just her godfather, fine. That makes perfect sense. If they're cousins, and she calls him uncle, nonsense. Do you see why I'm tearing out my hair? Do you see now why this video took so long? Are you getting a sense of what I've been going through? All right. Let's relax. Let's take a step back. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to myself. Remember how I said that we were going to lay everything out in clear sections and we weren't going to get distracted and everything was going to make perfect sense? That was a lie. That was foreshadowing. I do know what foreshadowing is. I have a master's degree. Obviously, I know what foreshadowing is. I've given up on that idea. I wanted to do a timeline so badly. I worked for so long trying to put together a coherent timeline, and I gave up. It can't be done. It's all just a big soup, and it's confusing. If we try to work simply based off of the cold hard facts, then we have contradictions. Clearly, I can't build you a fully canon, cohesive, provable timeline of events. I can't even tell you for sure what these characters' relationships are. So look at this data. Right, look at this data. This is from my Shane survey. This is from my survey. Look at the discrepancies here. The amount of people that think that Shane and Jazz are related and Marnie and Jazz are related is the same as the people who think that they're not. The only seemingly mostly unified opinion is that Marnie and Shane are related, and even that's not unanimous. In a second, we're going to talk about why I think this is the case. Why Shane, more than anyone else I've covered, has this tangled up mess of a personal life. But basically what I'm saying is that from now on, I'm going to have to make some leaps here. I'm going to have to start speculating, right? To use words like implies, assumedly, this hints at this, you know. Some of it is based on vibes. We have a lot more information, basically, that's not cold hard facts that we can use to build kind of like an emotional through line, like a prequel arc. We can use this place that he's in emotionally in the present day, in the game, and work backwards. But I've given you all of the solid facts to kind of give myself room to be wrong for the rest of the video. What I want to avoid is me having, you know, such strong opinions on the backstory that I kind of supplant that into your head. Because honestly, it's kind of the beauty of Shane's backstory that mostly there isn't one. Hi, it's me again, Fiona from the start of the day. Let's chat for a second, okay? I know I said there would be no tangents, but that was obviously foreshadowing. I don't know how much you know me. Some people have been watching my videos since like the very first one that I didn't think anyone was going to see, but I'm also like picking up new people all the time, right? Such is the nature of YouTube. So it's weird and hard to try to judge what you know about me. So I'm going to do a bit of an overview. My videos have been getting progressively longer. My first video ever about Alex was 1 hour and 13 minutes. My video about Sebastian was 4 hours. And what's the Shane one by now? 6. What's it going to end up being? Who fucking knows? And this is something that happens for most YouTubers. It's not just me. I listened to Jacob Geller talk about this on a podcast, and he had a few theories. And the one that I remember the most was like a responsibility. You have an audience now. The more your audience grows, the more people you know are going to be listening to you. So you care more about covering, all of the information that you can. You care more about thoroughness, you care more about accuracy. In my Alex video, in my first video, I legitimately just didn't think I was going to post it. So I missed a lot of stuff. Some heart events I spent like 1 minute talking about. Can you imagine that? In this day and age, from me? No. But now I spend months working on these things. I bought a green screen. I went into the woods once. This is my job now. So of course they're going to be longer and take more effort because this is what I spend most of my time doing. But that responsibility, I think, is also a trap. Or like it can be. I'm doing more research now and I'm trying to analyse like every little scrap of everything. But I do kind of feel like in focusing so much on lore, details, making everything make sense, I've kind of lost something. I think I'm in the weeds, I think I've kind of lost some of that top-down overview ability because of my channel getting more popular and because of anticipation of comments, anticipation of people correcting me in the comments. I remember in the Abigail video making fun of this like CinemaSins-esque critique. But isn't that kind of what I'm doing here with the backstory? Right? Aha! An inconsistency. Aha! But like, why is this line here? Why is Marnie telling us how long he's been staying with her? The amount of time doesn't really matter. Building a solid timeline, though tempting, doesn't really matter. People don't connect with Shane because of the intricate details of his backstory. It's what it's trying to communicate. It's what you get from it. The human experience, this pool of shared knowledge that we all have. Reaching into that and making a connection between the author and the audience, with the work itself as kind of like a stopgap to separate the two. He meant something, we take something, and that's not necessarily going to be the same thing. But isn't it better that it's vague? I've referenced wanting to know so badly about Shane's backstory, so badly what it is, but that's because I feel quite possessive over him. I want to know everything there is to know about him, clearly. But the point of his story isn't, if you have an abusive childhood, then you will become an alcoholic, and then you will meet a farmer and everything will be okay. If something very specific happens, then you will be okay. You know what I mean? The intricacies of it don't matter. It doesn't matter how he got to where he is, because he's still worthy of love and redemption regardless. He may think he's at rock bottom. He may think he's not able to climb out of the hole, but he is, and he does. You are always able. There is always tomorrow. You try and you fail, and you try and you fail, and that's life. His backstory is vague because the specifics of it don't matter. What matters is what it means to us, our interpretation. So, kids, do you know what we're going to do now? I am going to tell you my personal interpretation of Shane's backstory. There are some things that I like to keep purposely vague, so it's not like we're going to answer all the questions, but we're going to get pretty close. We are going to enter some new things into evidence here. Not cold, hard facts, warm, soft facts, squidgy facts that we have to kind of squish into shape a little bit. First, I have to talk to you about the pre-release dialogue.
Look at all those chickens.
I ended up mentioning this a little bit in my last video about Gridball. Please watch it. My family is dying, but I will re-explain it here because obviously not everyone saw it. So, as mentioned in the Shane video part 1, I downloaded Stardew Valley version 1.07 to compare to versions 1.5 and 1.6. In order to put all of that dialogue into my Shane dialogue spreadsheet so I could be autistic about it, I read a Reddit post about how to crack open this version to extract the dialogue. It wasn't that hard, I just had to unpack it. I don't know what that means. We're not going to unpack that. But I did it. I got the files. Easy breezy, beautiful. But I found something fucking bonkers. I found some unused dialogue. Some pre-release dialogue.
I cracked open the files, cracked them wide open, figured out how to do it, got into the game files. So here I put them all on my Google Drive. This is, obviously I just made a shortcut for myself so I could get all the Shane ones. And I just found something crazy. Right? So there's just a bunch of names. There's just a bunch of people's names. So this was his one just laying out here, right? We have a look at this. This is what it looks like. It goes Monday. I don't know you. Why are you talking to me? Monday 2, which means Monday at 2 hearts. I hardly know you. Why are you talking to me? Monday at 4 hearts. Sorry if I came off as rude. We know this about Shane. None of this is new information. This is all classic Shane. Very helpful to me. Wonderful. And then you go into like this folder that says winter, right? This was just in the folder that said dialogue in the game files, a file called winter. And there's a summer and a spring and a fall. If you go into this and you click on Shane, tomorrow I go back to the city again to work at the stadium. I've got to surround myself with sports if I hope to break into the industry. Plus I get to eat all the jalapeno chips I want. Who's that? Who's that? What? I've never seen that in my life. And none of this, not a single piece of this is surviving dialogue. So I guess this is like pre-release dialogue. This is from when he was developing the game and it's just still in here. So it says winter, but if you go to summer, you click on the same thing, it literally is just the exact same, right?
So for this, we have to bring someone out of retirement. Come here. I must be so desperate to come to him for help. So in my mind, because this is pre-release Shane, this is the guy voicing these lines. Okay? Keep that in your mind's eye. So let's read all of original Shane's dialogue. Right? There's not much. On Monday at 0 hearts, he will say, tomorrow I go back to the city again to work at the stadium. I've got to surround myself with sports if I hope to break into the industry. Plus, I get to eat all the jalapeno chips I want. On Monday at 4 hearts, he will say, hey buddy, or if you're a different gender, then he will say, hey, name, I wish you could grow jalapenos on that farm of yours. And then on Monday at 10 hearts, he'll say, hi, player name, it's been a while, how are you doing? I've been doing well at my new job, but I always look forward to coming home on Mondays. And then Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, we get what I assume was placeholder dialogue because he just says, me Shane. Hilarious. Oh, this guy, him Shane. Friday at 0 hearts, hey, I'm back. I just spent the last 3 days working at the stadium. We played some team from place. It was a fun game. What? Oh, yeah, our team lost. All right, I'm going to go put a frozen pizza in the oven or something. Saturday at 0 hearts. I was just daydreaming about sports again. I really, really want to become a sports analyst. If I don't make it, I'm going to be crushed. That reminds me, I need to update my sports website today. Saturday at 4 hearts. Oh, do you know that guy Josh? Alex used to be Josh, so he's saying Alex. He thinks he's going to become a sports pro. At least my goals are a little bit more realistic. Saturday at 8 hearts. I'd like to start a small chicken farm someday. Well, I guess I'd like to have a large supply of jalapeno chips and pizza too. Oh, sorry. I was getting carried away. Sunday at 0 hearts. I like staying here because I get to be around chickens. I like how excitable chickens are. Each one has a different personality, just like people. Maybe if I don't make it as a sports analyst, I will become a chicken man. Whatever that means. Sunday at 6 hearts. I do like chickens, but I don't want to live with my aunt forever. Oh well. Who is this? Okay, let's process this, right? Let's process this, okay? It's obviously the same guy. It's the same idea of a guy because he talks about spicy food, sports, frozen pizza, and chickens. And these are Shane traits. This is Shane. Not canonically, like I'm not saying that these lines apply to him as he is now, but this is original Shane. He comes from the same seed of an idea. Before we bring this back to the Marnie conversation, before we bring this back to, the backstory, I have to talk about this some more. He used to want to be a sports analyst. He used to be friendly. He seemingly didn't have depression. He shaded Alex. He has a website. It gives off much younger vibes. He's talking about his life goals. He's trying to break into an industry. He only works a few days a week. He's talking about Alex like they're the same age. And if we look at original Shane, he does look young. Even the first few, hang on, I have him. The first few iterations of Shane all look quite young, right? And then at this point, he got this stubble. So yeah, the stubble, it does a lot of things, for me specifically. It does make him look older. Fascinating. Anyway, fascinating. The soul is there. Jalapeno chips, pizza, chickens. But none of this dialogue is used in the actual game. Not one line. Which is interesting because all of the characters have a file like this with pre-release dialogue. Now for a special treat, I'm going to read you my hand-picked favourite pre-release lines. Some of these are gold. Are you ready? So these are Sam. Your tool is the hoe, and mine is the guitar. They both require a skilled touch, am I right? Chee-hee-hee! I wonder if any alien civilizations have built balloon cities on gaseous planets. Sorry, I get carried away sometimes. I really wish we could see a flying saucer someday. It would be fun to fly up in a hot air balloon and go inside a cloud. I think the future is going to be full of great surprises. Hi, player. Today I saw a cloud shaped like a duck. Elise Sebastian. I've been working on this video game. It has a guy in it who is making a video game about a guy who starts to realise he is a character in a video game. Think about it. My computer is the only connection I have with the outside world. Otherwise I'd be alone with a bunch of farmers and old people. No offence. Do you have any llamas on your farm? Have you ever noticed that the word llama kind of looks like a llama? I built a snow zombie, but Demetrius made me get rid of it. It was totally bogus of him. The more I learn about computers, the more powerful I'll become. I want to use my powers for good, of course. Absolutely iconic. There's more. There's so much more. That was literally just Sam and Sebastian. But I don't want to get distracted, but I'll leave it there. But Sebastian's such a little freak. But there is also a lot of dialogue in these files that does exist in the game. For example, Sam says, I've been friends with Sebastian for a while. He's a pretty cool guy. If you two weren't around, I wouldn't really have any friends in town. Like, that's one of his pre-release dialogue lines, and that is in the game. The majority of his dialogue about his dad is the same. For Sam and Sebastian, it's honestly about half and half, like unseen dialogue to dialogue that did make the cut. But Shane? As far as I can tell, Shane is the only character where none of his pre-release dialogue ended up in the game. Not a single one of those lines survives, which implies like a character overhaul. But if we look at Marnie, barring some edits, all of her pre-release dialogue lines are still in the game. For example, she has a pre-release line, you can make feed out of corn or wheat. Or you can buy it from me, of course. I could use the cash. Adios. And then in the actual game, this became, you can use a scythe? 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 Scythe. 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 Scythe? I don't know. I'm gonna look now.
Scythe.
Scythe. You can use a scythe to cut feed from grass. Or you can buy it from me, of course. I could use the cash. Adios. So all that changed there with Marnie's line was the type of item. All of her pre-release lines are like this. You know, it's either the exact same or there's some like very small edit. And do you know one pre-release line from Marnie that is the exact same? My nephew Shane has been staying at my place the last few months. He helps me out with the chickens, so I'm not complaining. I'm sorry. Does this not recontextualize everything? This pre-release line about Shane exists at the same time as original pre-release Shane. It was written for him. In this pre-release version, Jazz does not exist, right? Jazz doesn't have a pre-release dialogue file. Shane is younger bachelor age. He's staying with Marnie while he works at the stadium and tries to become a sports analyst. So when Marnie says, where did I put it? It's over here. So when Marnie says that he's been staying with her for a few months, that makes sense. Up until recent updates, Marnie didn't have any dialogue about Jazz because when Marnie's dialogue was written, Jazz did not exist. It makes sense for Shane only to have been staying there for a few months if he moved in with Marnie to pursue some career goal. And he says he doesn't want to live with his aunt forever, implying that it's temporary. So do you want to hear my theory? You're gagging for it. You're gagging for it. You want it so bad. I think this one line of dialogue, is an oversight. I think it's left over from this early version, and someone, Eric, didn't think through the implications. Because if you take it out, then everything makes sense, right? I'm gonna, hang on. Okay, they're separate statements now. And if we take this one out, if we take that one out, everything makes sense now, right? That's what got us all in a tizzy. The implication that Shane has only been staying here for a few months. But if we take it out, then we can once again build a beautiful, cohesive timeline. And this is the timeline that I believe. This is the timeline that's true in my head. So Shane, in my head, did not just move here a few months ago. The photo, where'd I put it? From secret note number 11 was taken by Shane shortly after he moved in with his aunt Marnie. And he did this because his two best friends had just died and he was responsible for Jazz. And he couldn't handle it on his own. Marnie was able to provide a place to live, and Marnie ends up taking most of the responsibility for Jazz. Jazz talks a lot about how Marnie is in charge of her. Aunt Marnie won't let me go out after 6 o'clock. It's not fair. I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. And it makes sense that Shane, with what we know about him, would not be able to look after a child. That he would just let his aunt, do most of the work. So if Jazz was, 2 or 3 when they moved in, of course she would call her Aunt Marnie. Because that's what Shane calls her. It's Aunt Marnie in that family friend kind of way. Right? Do you see? That makes sense. Jazz is related to no one. She doesn't seem new to the area at all, and neither does Shane. Because they've been living here for 5 years. You take out this one line and it all makes sense. But it's still in there from when Shane was just some jalapeno-loving sports analyst wannabe. Maybe since he wasn't a romanceable, concerned ape didn't think too hard about the timeline. He was just some side character. Who was to know that the game would be so successful and then weirdos like me would scrutinize it this much? But Eric, please. Eric, please, just change it. If you just change it to a few years instead of a few months. I took it down, it's not on there anymore. If you just change it to a few years instead of a few months, everything makes sense. It all falls into place. Please. Please. All right, I'm going to start putting up my warm, soft facts. Do you see it's orange? Because they're warm. They're the warm facts as opposed to the cold, hard facts. Look, this is why I structured the video in this way. Because what I'm going to do here is essentially ignore a canon line of dialogue. I'm going to disregard one of our cold, hard facts. Disregarded. Get disregarded, bitch. Because it makes everything so much smoother, right? This is my interpretation. This is my idea of his backstory. This is my Fiona Sexter cinematic universe. Wait, he doesn't still need to be here, does he? There we go. If you want to keep... Oh, I shouldn't have thrown it on the floor. If you want to keep this cold, hard fact in your interpretation, that's fine. You can do that. That's your prerogative. I love you. But I think that based on how it's a pre-release line, just disregarding one piece of information makes the most sense. Makes more sense than bending over backwards in order to make this shit make sense. Okay? Okay? Okay. I'm gonna have to finish this tomorrow. 8 o'clock, I'm tired. The sun's going down. So I'll see you later, I guess.
He has a depth of anger and sadness that rests between his eyes, and he can drink forever and ever and ever.
It's the next day. I got tired. Turns out having 2 beers at 1 o'clock makes you sleepy. Who would have guessed? Not me. Okay, so now we have our basics of his backstory and his timeline. We can start to fill in some more blanks. Now we have our skeleton. Let's add our meat. Where's my stick? Nice. I'm going to put a picture here of my big planning diagram that was on this whiteboard. We're just going to knock these bad boys off one by one. We're just going to start taking things off. Firstly, we're going to talk about his past, his backstory. Kind of like we already did, but now, it's my interpretation. And so the rules of canon do not constrict me any longer. You have to listen to it.
Love mango chutney, really any type of chutney.
So we've been over that line that he says at the luau. Wow, you don't get hot pepper chutney like this in the big city. And this could just mean I love living in a small town. You wouldn't get this in the big city, right? It could just be general pro-small town sentiment like we get a lot in Stardew Valley. But since when do you not get good chutney in a big city? Is that a thing? Is that old adage? Is that a common saying? I don't think so. I think it's much more likely that he's comparing this chutney to chutney that he's eaten in the big city and saying that this chutney is better. It comes from experience. And we know this man likes food. We went over that in part 1. So in my mind, Shane did not grow up in Pelican Town. He grew up in Zuzu City. And I have more things to back this up. It's not just the chutney. Chutney. Really, any kind of chutney. First, we have his 10 heart scene. For this, Shane takes you on the bus to a Tunnelers game, who are the Zuzu City gridball team. So this is a strike in favour of my theory, because he doesn't just support some random team, he supports the local team. So it's not like he's from Chicago or something, you know? He's obviously from the local area, if not Zuzu City itself. Furthermore, he has a dialogue line where he asks you what you think about your first gridball game. Anyway, it's your first gridball game, huh? Well, what do you think? If you answer, noisy, it makes me appreciate how peaceful it is back home. He says, oh yeah? I guess that makes sense. Me, I get bored with Pelican Town sometimes. But I like that you're different. We balance each other out. If you answer, fun, Pelican Town seems really boring in comparison. He says, oh really? I'm surprised. Didn't you move to Stardew Valley to escape the noise of the city? I mean, don't get me wrong. I totally understand. My life in Pelican Town is pretty bland, you know. So he says that he's bored with his life. He calls it bland, and he refers to Pelican Town when he says it. He gets bored with Pelican Town. His life in Pelican Town is pretty bland. So he's directly comparing the city to the place he lives now and saying that he likes the city more. So why not live there? Why move to Pelican Town? Well, it's because of what we said about him moving in with Marnie because of jazz. It makes sense that if he were forced to move from the city to Pelican Town because of this, you know, life change, then he would miss the city. It's kind of like a reluctant move. Every day that I film these videos seems to be the hottest day in the world. This is also backed up by this sense of boredom that Shane has outside of this scene as well. At 4 Hearts on a Wednesday, he will say, every day is the same. Stocking those horrible shelves, going to the saloon, tossing and turning all night. So it's specifically the fact that every day is the same that he has an issue with. He also has a line at 6 Hearts. I'll definitely be going to the saloon tonight. What else is there to do? And one at 8 Hearts. If I watch more TV, maybe I can forget about life. That would be relaxing. Do you see what I mean? He just seems bored. And of course this links in with his arc and his depression and everything. But I think it definitely wouldn't help with your sense of boredom if you had to move from a big city to a small town. There's also this line he has at 10 Hearts. Do you ever feel like the whole world is scrutinising you, like some disgusting insect? And this could also link to this idea of moving to a small town. In the city, you're anonymous. You can walk down the street in your pyjamas, drunk at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and no one will bat an eye. But here in Pelican Town, he probably gets a lot of people staring at him, judging him. Apart from Pam, in Pelican Town, Shane is probably the person who's like doing the worst. So he feels scrutinised, and that bothers him. You see what I mean? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? But then the question becomes, what was he doing before he moved here? If he had this whole life in the city, what did it consist of? And this is something that we really, really don't have a lot of clues for. I'm going to speculate, you know, I'm going to give you a couple ideas, but pretty much anything goes here, you know. So my first idea is to do with what he says when you're married. If only, I was just thinking back on the glory days when I played gridball on the varsity team. Now I'm old and weak though. So varsity means high school, right? And this is another hint that he didn't grow up in Pelican Town because they don't have a high school. They just have Penny. Maybe they used to, but you know, whatever. But we can see that he refers to this time period as the glory days. Now, maybe this is the horniness getting to me. Maybe I just like this idea, but consider this. Shane is a big gridball head, as we know. See, I keep all my props. He takes you to a Tunnelers game for his 10 Heart event. He's there during Alex's little gridball club. He mentions the Tunnelers quite frequently in dialogue. He's telling us that he played gridball in high school and he was good at it, right? Varsity means good. And they were glory days. So obviously it was like kind of like a big peak in his life. Consider Shane as a peaked in high school kind of guy. They were the glory days. It's all downhill from there. But why would it have been downhill from high school if he was so good at it? If he was varsity? Like he didn't get a scholarship or something? Well, here we can tie in more of our emotional themes. Ooh. I would like to point you first to his 4 Hearts line. Every time I try something new, it goes horribly wrong. You learn to just stay in a shell. and then to his dialogue during the two-heart scene. You ever feel like no matter what you do, you're just going to fail? So we may not be able to map an accurate lore, backstory, timeline, but hell if I can't give this man an emotional backstory. If he's thinking fondly back to the glory days when he played gridball, and if he fails everything he tries, then it naturally follows that he did try, but he failed. Maybe he wasn't quite good enough to get a scholarship. Maybe he fumbled when the college scouts were there. Maybe he got an injury. This is a really popular fan theory, that he got some kind of injury. But whatever happened, we can see that this trying and failing, this message that he can't do anything right, started at a young age. In high school. But what else? If, as we say, he moved to Pelican Town like 5 years ago, if, as we talked about in the last video, when we meet him, he's like 30, and if the gridball ended in high school, then, you know, that's like 7 years there that we still have just like blank space. What was he up to? I was originally thinking it was like chicken related, because in his 8-heart scene, he reveals that he's been breeding and raising special blue hens in secret. And like, that's complicated, surely. It's like chicken eugenics. He must know a lot about chickens. But then in his room, there's that book, How to Raise Chickens. So if he was some kind of chicken genius, if he had all this chicken experience, you would think he wouldn't need to read like Chickens 101, you know? I figure that in the 5-ish years that he's been living with Marnie, looking after these chickens, he's picked some stuff up. He's become a chicken expert, but he didn't arrive in town, you know, knowing much about chickens. So I don't think that's a good answer to what he was doing during that time. The only other thing I can think of that's a hint to these like lost Shane years is his 7-heart scene part 2, the one with the Joja Cola ad. This heart event is one of 2 heart events that existed for Shane during the original release of the game, you know, when Stardew Valley 1.0 came out. As a reminder, he only became romanceable during version 1.1, which is when most of his other heart events were added. There was the 2 heart scene, and then there was this scene. We'll go over it properly in the next video, but basically, Shane has enlisted Clint and Emily's help to make an ad for a competition that Joja is running. Joja Co is having a video advertisement competition. The prize is 10,000 G. As far as we can tell, he wrote the script, he's the director, he bought a new camera just for this. And he tells you to walk in the background of the scene to give it more authenticity. He says action, he says cut. It kind of seems like he knows what he's doing. Furthermore, if we look at his dialogue file, not his unreleased dialogue, his actual dialogue file, from Stardew Valley version 1.6, aka the most recent version, we can find these lines of dialogue. Okay, that'll require a great script. Maybe I'll ask Elliot for advice next time I see him at the saloon. Sounds great. I'll have to create a bunch of practical effects to make it look cool. So these are unused, you don't see them in the game. I guess in a way they're also unreleased dialogue, but they're still in the file in the game to this day. And it seems like they're from, you know, an early version of this 7-heart scene. He talks about a script, he talks about doing practical effects. It sounds like he's filming something. Me too, babes. And obviously these lines didn't end up in the game, so we're going to take them with a grain of salt. But they suggest that he's able to write a script, and he's able to create practical effects. The script writing he seems less sure about. You know, he says he might talk to Elliot for advice, but he doesn't just go like, oh, I couldn't do that, you know? So what it could be is that he was like working for the film or TV industry or something. Probably not as a director or a writer, because then his advert would be better, because it is a bit rubbish. Sorry, babe. But you know, he's picked up some stuff along the way. He knows to get an extra in there for authenticity. He knows to say cut, he knows to say action. I'm going to put it up, but this is literally just an idea. So I put, I don't know, maybe. Because he could have been a sports analyst, like original Shane. He could have been a stripper. We don't know. And that's part of the beauty of it, like I mentioned. Whatever backstory you want to give him, you can. You know, it's kind of like a blank canvas. Except, of course, for his friends.
Oh my god, she's such a meanie, boo! But her parents are dead. So now I hope you feel terrible, audience.
So this is one of our cold hard facts. Where's my... So this is one of our cold hard facts. Shane was friends with Jazz's parents, and they died. This is all that we know for sure about this situation. But of course, we can speculate. And we will. But just sit with that for a minute. He had these 2 friends, and they both died, and he was left to care for their child. Can you imagine? No wonder he's so depressed. And they must have been like best friends if they made him the godfather, and then if he also actually became responsible for her. We're going to talk about this more in a minute, but sometimes godparents are just like, it's more of a cultural title. You know, it doesn't actually have any like legal sway. If the parents were to die, it wouldn't just mean that you would automatically get that child. But he does have her. So obviously they believed in him to a certain extent. You know, they were quite close. They thought that he could take care of her. And we look at this man now, my boogie. We look at Shane when you meet him in the game, and he can't take care of her. He doesn't take care of her. Like I said before, Marnie takes most of the responsibility. Shane spends every night of his life getting drunk. He has so little dialogue about Jazz. It's actually kind of insane. As of version 1.07, he had 1 line about her. As of version 1.5, he had 3 lines about her, and that included 1 during marriage and 1 at a festival. And as of 1.6, he has 4 more for a total of 7. So in my head, right, he lived in Zuzu, he had these 2 friends, and the 2 friends had a kid. And Shane at this point is doing fine. Probably not amazing, you know, but he seems like a stable enough adult for these people to give him the responsibility of their child. And then they die. His 2 best friends. And now he has this kid to look after. And he does not handle this well, as is frankly understandable. He can't deal with it. Jazz, if we go with my interpretation that this picture was taken right after they moved in with Marnie, was a little toddler. And toddlers are hard fucking work. So I hear. I don't have one. So he's dealing with all of this grief and all of this responsibility, and he's like, I can't do it. And so he moves in with his aunt because he needs help. Right. Makes sense. So let's go back to the past. Let's discuss the death of Jazz's parents. We have 2 clues here. First, Jazz has a new line of dialogue as of 1.6 where she says, I had a nightmare that the house was on fire. Now she says this according to the code, specifically 1 week after Shane's 6-heart event. And in that event, we'll cover this in the next video, but basically he comes very close to death. Jazz even has a line the day after the event where she says, is Shane going to be okay? So she knows that something's going on. She knows that he was in hospital. So I can't help but feel like that first line is some kind of hint as to how her parents died, right? Their house burned down. If the 6-heart event with Shane has just happened, and if Jazz is aware of the life and death stakes of it all, then she's thinking about losing people close to her. And it makes sense that this like trauma from when she was a baby would kind of manifest itself in a dream, you know? She had a nightmare that the house burned down. So that's clue and possible theory number 1. Clue and possible theory number 2 is to do with something you find in Jazz's bedroom. If you click on her doll's house, it says, the little family is gathered around the dinner table. Wait, except Grandpa. He's wedged under the bed for some reason. And this sticks out. Most of the other descriptions of her room are like, a paint set, some arts and crafts. So this comes across as like, kind of sinister. It could just be a joke. If you click on the Jack-in-the-Box in her room, it says, Jack-in-the-Box is sprawled out, his arms bent at grotesque angles. His hollow eyes peer coldly into the distance. And I guess this is meant to be like an edgy joke about how creepy these things are. So Grandpa being wedged under the bed could just be intended as like, lol, kids. That's so random. Why is Grandpa under the bed? But it's so specific. The whole family is around the dinner table except for Grandpa, and he's wedged under the bed for some reason. So there is a reason. And this could be that Jazz has picked up on Marnie's secret boyfriend, Mayor Lewis. Lewis obviously sleeps over in Marnie's bed because his fucking purple underwear is in her room. So maybe Jazz is just mirroring that, and so she stuck the old man doll somewhere weird. But then why is he under the bed? Why is he not in the bed? Maybe one time Jazz needed to go into Marnie's room and Lewis hid under the bed and she saw him. I think that that's probably the most likely thing. But another theory that we can explore is a bit more, I don't know. I don't even really have a theory here. It's just weird, right? And it's specifically Grandpa. It's not just like the old man, it's Grandpa. Maybe there was like some kind of abuse or something. I don't know. It's not my area, child psychology. This isn't a theory, I'm just like putting it out there into the world. If you have any ideas about how the grandpa under the bed could link to her dead parents, let me know. I guess it's also kind of interesting how Jazz presumably doesn't have any other family. Like, if she did have a grandpa and he was a normal, fine grandpa, then surely when her parents died, she would have gone to him. For this, I had a long, extensive discussion with my friend Mongoosing. And if you are a Shane girly, then you know that fucking name. And yes, we are friends. And yes, I know you're jealous. She lives in America and she has a child, which is very helpful to me as someone who has neither of those qualities. And I also did some research into like the legal system, which I have to do a surprising amount for fucking Stardew Valley YouTuber. Because like, what even is a godfather in this day and age? Unless you have one, or you are one, or you appoint one, you probably just don't even know. Well, as far as I can tell, as of now, it just has cultural value. A lot of people don't even appoint one because it doesn't really do anything. It's kind of like, we really trust this person. You're going to be kind of like a mentor to my child. But it's not the case that if the parents die, then the godparents automatically just get the child. You would have to appoint that person as your child's legal guardian in case of death in your will. But if there's a child whose parents die and they have no other family, then the government apparently does take into account the godparent, because being a godparent is like an endorsement from the parents. You know, that's a kind of a cultural way of saying, we trust this person. This person has a relationship with our child. But that wouldn't be an automatic process. If you're someone's godfather, you wouldn't just suddenly, you know, be bequeathed a child. According to Mongoosing, someone would probably approach Shane and be like, we're trying to figure out what to do with this kid. Do you want to make a case that you should get her? And Shane would have to like fill out all these forms, go through this process, basically like fight to try to get her, as opposed to just being like landed with her. It would be super irresponsible for the state to just like foist a child off on this unwilling man. And in order to then actually get custody of her, he would have presumably had to like pass some checks. You know, they would have looked into him. They would have said, this is a put together enough human being for us to give the responsibility of this child. But the alternative to this is that Jazz's parents did write Shane into the will as her legal guardian. So there was a legal process. I'm so tired talking about the fucking legal system still. But the alternative to this is that Jazz's parents did write Shane into the will as the person who would take responsibility for Jazz. But either way, whichever one of these options is the case, it paints a picture of Shane at that point in time as a very different person to the one that we meet in the game. Either he had his life together enough for Jazz's parents to write him into the will as being her legal guardian. You know, they thought he was responsible enough for that. Or he had all of this time and energy to expend into trying to get custody of her. Warm, soft fact. Maybe this is why he went to Marnie's house. Maybe it helped him plead his case to get Jazz. Because now you've got two adults, Shane and Marnie, and you've got a house, instead of just Shane and presumably an apartment. If he was the legal guardian in the will, he probably would have had an easier time getting custody, but he still would have faced like some scrutiny. As Mongoose pointed out, the family courts in the US are known for favouring women. They love giving custody to women. So Shane, a single man in his 20s, why do you want this kid? You fucking nonce. But Shane and Marnie, this older woman who owns property, she has a business, is a much more appealing option. Got another fact for you. With the Comic Sans and the kind of wibbly, I feel like I'm like a primary school teacher. Write down the date and the title in your exercise books, please. Our learning objectives today are quite diffuse, to be fair. So if we've kind of established that he would have had to be active in this process, you know, it wasn't that she was just like foisted onto him. Why would he do that? Why would he want that? Sure, I guess like a big part of it would be to honour his friends. And maybe him and Jazz had a relationship already. But still, that's like a big life decision to take on this responsibility. I write fanfiction, and a lot of people write fanfiction as if Jazz was kind of like this burden on him. Like he didn't want to just suddenly be in charge of this kid. He does say when you're married that he swore he'd never have a kid. It's weird. When I was younger, I swore I'd never have a kid. I wonder what happened to me. So I guess it naturally follows that he didn't super want Jazz if he swore he'd never have a kid, right? Like that's some very strong language. He swore he'd never have a kid, right? But if we put this together with a line from earlier, I guess I've grown attached to Marnie and Jazz. We're a ragtag bunch, but it kind of feels like a weird family. I never really had much of a family as a kid. And we've got that in our cold hard facts. First of all, ragtag bunch. If Jazz was related to either Shane or Marnie, I would say that that's not really ragtag, but, you know, I digress. So he never really had much of a family as a kid. That is a big thing to say. I've seen this statement taken in a lot of ways. I read one fanfiction that said that his parents were like drug dealers. They kept going in and out of prison. I read another fanfiction that said they were dead. I read another fanfiction that said they were abusive. You know, you can make what you want out of that statement. It's pretty vague, and deliberately so. This is one of those things where I'm not really going to try hard to like define it, you know? It's a free space. But what we can say for sure is that this man did not have an easy childhood if he never really had much of a family as a kid. Whatever he means by that, it was hard. And the face he pulls when he says it is this one. That's not a sad face. That is a pissed off face. Like, as a point of comparison, I don't have much family living in this country. For the longest time, the only family that I had was my mum and my sister. And everyone else that I'm related to either lives in Scotland or America. And that is still the case now. But now, you know, I have my husband, I have my cats. I would say that they're my family. So in a numbers sense, right, I could say I never really had much of a family as a kid. But I wouldn't say that because I did. Because it felt like a family, you know. We loved each other, we were there for each other. And if I were to describe it that way, I wouldn't say it in like a pissed off way, like he does. I would say it entirely neutrally, you know, like the way I just explained it to you. I don't have many blood family members living in England. Neutral. But Shane's expression, you know, the way that he says it, just hints so strongly at something being wrong. And he says it right after he says the line about Jazz and Marnie. He never really had much of a family as a kid. Jazz is a kid, and they are a weird family. If we put this together with how he swore he'd never have a kid, that's such a strong word. Like he made some kind of vow to himself not to procreate. It kind of suggests this awareness of cycles, of generational trauma. He doesn't want to pass down everything terrible that was passed down to him. The buck stops with me, type thing. Combine that with his self-hatred, he probably just thought he'd be bad at it. So it tracks that Shane had a rough childhood with terrible or absent parents, or maybe both, and he wants to make sure that Jazz doesn't have that experience too. I see a lot of people headcanon that Shane was in foster care, and that's why he wanted to make sure that Jazz didn't end up in foster care. I don't know anything about foster care, so I'm not going to speak extensively on that. The most that I know is Tracy Beaker. But like, that's why he wants her. That's why he fought for her, despite swearing he'd never have a kid. Because of his own childhood. Because he wants to protect her from that. This soft, mean man. I like him a normal amount, okay? He's protecting himself with his mean shell. And he's kind of protecting her too. Because Jazz has these two lines. I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Do you want something? I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. And these stand out to me because all of the other lines where Jazz is talking about what she's meant to do, like rules, she always says like, Aunt Marnie told me to do this. Aunt Marnie told me not to do this. But these, she doesn't. So I think that Shane told her not to talk to strangers. Right? Where else would she have gotten that from? There aren't any strangers in Pelican Town. It's a town of like 30 people. But Shane, coming from the city, being all jaded and stuff, would have told her that. And he doesn't talk to strangers. He doesn't talk to anyone. And that's the only way he knows how to make himself feel safe. And so he's passing that on to her because he wants to make her feel safe. Because he wants to feel like she's safe. He's trying to protect her. I'm not crying. I have hay fever. He says over and over that he doesn't try. And he can't control anything. But baby boy, that is trying. That is controlling things. But he doesn't see that because he thinks that his life is a joke. And that everything he does fails. My boy. My child. Oh. How many times over all of my videos do you think that I've stroked his face lovingly? Probably a lot. Fiona likes a drinking game whenever she looks at him and says, my boy. So, what is the point of all of this? Well, obviously to build a backstory, because that was kind of the point. But also to think about his emotional state. When we meet Shane, he's at a certain point in his life. He's got anxiety, depression, a drinking problem, suicidal ideation, no hope for the future. So I'm interested in the journey it took him to get there. As we've established, around 5 years ago, he would have needed to be in a good enough state in order to get custody of Jazz. So over these years, there's been a decline. Maybe it was gradual, Maybe he suddenly got a lot worse right after he moved to Pelican Town. Maybe it's because of his responsibility of jazz. Maybe it's grief for his friends. Maybe he misses the city. He doesn't like small town life. Maybe it's his dead-end job. But whatever it was, we can say for sure he wasn't always like this.
My roommates are killing me. I'm fine, you're right. Okay, I like them, all right? I hate myself. Is that what you want me to say?
So we're going to shift our focus a little bit now. I think we know everything we need to know about certain parts of his backstory to now talk about his relationships, especially those he has with Jazz and Marnie. Something I think is particularly interesting is how he drinks at the bar every day. In his 7 Heart scene, part 1, Marnie makes a bit of a crack at him and she says, "Let me guess, Gus had a clearance sale on canned beer?" We'll talk more about this line later, but what it tells us is that Gus does sell canned beer. If he wanted to, Shane could be just buying cans of beer and drinking them at home. We see that as well with his 2 Heart scene, how he's drinking beer on the pier. Bars. And he even gives one to you. So he's got like a pack. So why doesn't he drink at home? Why does he spend every day of his life drinking at the saloon? At the saloon. This was expensive. I have to get it in the shot. It's a tax write-off. Because he's so antisocial. We've established this by now. It's actually really interesting from a game design point of view how available he is to interact with, despite his clear wish to be left alone. But that's going to be a tangent at some point down the line. Etc. He could be drinking at the bar in order to like keep it away from Jazz, so she doesn't have to see it. Like maybe it is responsible, in a way. But he's gone so much. Jazz has a line. Shane's gone a lot, and Aunt Marnie is busy all the time, so I have to invent my own games. I'm thankful for all my toys. She doesn't say Shane's busy. She doesn't say Shane's at work. He's just gone a lot. And she's right. He spends most of his time outside of the house. As someone who has depression, this is not normal depression behaviour. So it's likely there's a reason that he wants to be out of the house. I think it has implications for his relationships, especially with Marnie. Props time. I moved house, in case you can't tell. And we own it. We own it now, so I can put as much blue tack up there as I want. I'm going to paint a mural. A Shane mural, a Cheryl. So Marnie and Shane's relationship, as far as we can tell, isn't the best. As we went over earlier, when they talk about their living situation, they both say some kind of variation of, "I can't complain," which implies that they want to complain. You know, there's something to complain about. Shane says his room is small, and Marnie, I'm assuming, just like isn't thrilled to have her 30-year-old nephew living in her house. But they're family, so they can't complain. Our real clues come from Shane's 4 Heart scene and 7 Heart scene. Now, of course, we're going to talk about this more in depth next video when we talk about his heart events, but we'll pick out a few things for our purposes here. In the 4 Heart scene, you find him out cold on the floor of his bedroom. Marnie asks you to help, you go and wake him up, and then they say this. "Shane, what's the matter with you? All you do anymore is mope around your room and drink beer." You wouldn't understand. "I'm worried. What's your plan? Don't you ever think about the future?" And this to me gives the vibe that this is not a new problem. This is an old problem. This is a conversation they've had before. She's kind of acting like his parent here. What's your plan? Where is your life going? Why do you stay in your room so much? And then we have the 7 Heart part 1 scene. "Hi Shane, you look unusually happy today. You're right, I haven't felt this light since I was a kid. Let me guess, Gus had a clearance sale on canned beer?" Good one. And I think these 2 scenes combined make a lot of people kind of hate Marnie. They see her as this unsupportive figure in his life. The joke about the canned beer is kind of a pot shot. It's a bit of a low blow. She sees him happy for the first time in forever and she assumes, or she jokes, that it's because there was a sale on beer. She assumes the worst of him. And we see this again in his 14 Heart scene, where she assumes that he's relapsing. But I have a lot of feelings about that scene, so we will save that for part 4. But I can understand that interpretation of Marnie, right? Here's Shane, this guy who struggles so much with addiction and depression, and Marnie finds him in this compromised state and she just kind of lectures him. All you do is mope around your room all day. You know, it's not the most compassionate of responses. She could have been like, "Oh, honey, let me get you some water, let me help you up. I'm here for you." But she doesn't do that. And this is part of why I get the vibe that this is an old problem. This isn't a new conversation, because this is a woman at the end of her rope. Marnie, in all other contexts, is a universally lovely person. She's friendly. She gives you advice. I'm sure the first time that she found Shane passed out on the floor, she was a lot more sympathetic, but now she's tired. It's been years. Doesn't he have a plan? And so when he comes home one day looking happy, I think it's kind of fair enough to assume it's for a beer-related reason. If it's been years since he's been this happy, if it's unusual, if he hasn't felt this way since he was a kid, she wouldn't really know how to respond to it. It does kind of suck what she says, but I'm just trying to have some empathy here. It clearly kind of hurts his feelings, what she says, because he turns away, he looks down and he says, "Good one." But I don't think she means it in a mean way. I think that that's just the kind of thing she expects from him at this point. In this kind of dynamic, one has usually been either the Marnie or the Shane in this situation. Sometimes both. You're either the person who desperately needs help, or you're the person who desperately wants to give it to them. Shane is suffering. His life is hard. In his 6 Heart scene, he's literally suicidal. And it's also hard to be Marnie, to support someone you care about, to watch them suffer, to pour your energy and resources into them and see no improvement. Those wells of empathy and patience, they're not bottomless. They dry up. I am the Shane in this situation, and I've seen my partner try to support me and fail, and I would blame him. Why isn't he saying exactly what I need to hear in this moment? Why can't he put his own stuff aside and just focus on me? But he's a person too. It might not be as hard on him, but it's still hard on him. He might not be suffering as much, but he's still suffering. But then from Shane's point of view, it will be hard to see that his issues have now made someone close to him also suffer. Honestly, that's probably the hardest part of going through something like this, for me at least, is seeing the effect it has on the people around you. When all you want is to lean into self-destruction, but you can't do that without damaging other people too. And that is a good thing. Right? That is a good thing. Like, if I hadn't had my husband around in 2023, when I was at my worst, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know where I would be today, if I would be here. If I lived alone, I definitely would have become like an alcoholic. So it is a good thing to have people around you to stick around for. But when you're in that headspace, it becomes a kind of resentment. Here are these people standing in my way from reaching my rock bottom. So either you just isolate and you don't tell anyone what you're going through, or you feel like a burden. After Shane's 6 Heart scene, where he almost kills himself, he comes to your door the next day and, among other things, he says, "Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for taking care of me. And I want you to know that I'm going to take things a little more seriously from now on. I don't want to be a burden on anyone." And I think this says so much about how he feels about, like, the nature of caring for other people. He thinks he has to come to you and apologize and say thank you. He's embarrassed. He tells you that he's going to start going to therapy. He says he's going to take things a little more seriously, which reminds me of the 4 Heart scene where Marnie said that he should have a plan. But like, what things? What things is he going to take more seriously? I think he was taking things pretty seriously before, when he thought about killing himself. It's quite serious. I guess he means like responsibilities and stuff. Jazz. Life. But baby girl, you weren't able to take things seriously because you have depression. It's this kind of bootstraps mentality, just try hard enough and everything will be okay. You just need to like snap out of it. And he says he doesn't want to be a burden. Honey, sweetheart. Like I said, I understand this mentality completely. All he does is mope around his room and drink beer, work and sleep and drink to dull the feelings of self-hatred. You would feel like a burden, like a weight, like a responsibility. He's just come off his 6 Heart scene, his rock bottom. He's deep in those feelings of regret and wanting to change. But then we see this kind of shift with the 7 Heart scene part 1, where right after Marnie makes her joke about the canned beer, Shane says, I sometimes forget that I really do have friends, people that care about me, and it's okay for me to rely on them. It doesn't make me weak. So at some point between the post 6 Heart scene and the 7 Heart scene part 1, he's stopped feeling like a burden. He's realised it's okay to be a weight on other people because it means you're leaning on them. And I'm not sure what caused this change between these two scenes. Maybe just time, distance. Maybe it's because he's sober now. He's able to think through things a little bit more clearly. So I wonder how much of this burdensome feeling is coming from Marnie and how much is coming from himself. We know that he hates himself. We know that he drinks to dull the feelings of self-hatred. He insults himself like a million times through his heart events and his dialogue. Bro is primed to feel like a burden. I don't know how much we can blame Marnie for that. I think it's a relationship with a lot of nuance. I'm a Marnie sympathizer. We write Marnie with layers in this household. All right, now let's think about Jazz. The kids in this game have huge fucking heads. Shane and Jazz's relationship is interesting. I'm going to take kind of a nuanced approach here. I know, shocking. Because I know a lot of people love writing fanfiction of like Dad Shane, Girl Dad Shane, like plaiting her hair, dressing up with her, stuff like that. Keep doing that. I'm not telling you to stop. Please keep doing that. I just think it's not this perfect relationship. Okay? And that's fine. I like things more when they're messy because it means they're real. They're fucked up. So Mongoose pointed out to me a particular line of Jazz's that she has at 8 Hearts. You're always so nice to me, Mrs. Player. Grown-ups are usually mean and boring, but you're different. Grown-ups are usually mean and boring. Who is she talking about? Who is mean to her? And the obvious answer, really the only answer here, is Shane. Sure, she could be talking about Marnie, saying that Marnie's being mean in reference to discipline. For example, like, it's mean that she only lets me out after 6 o'clock. But Jazz is smart, so I think that Marnie would count as boring for that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying that he is mean to her. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying this man is mean to children. I'm just saying that, come on, it's Shane, right? It's Shane. This guy's hostile. He gets in moods. He has mental health issues. He's gonna snap at her sometimes. Then he probably feels bad and apologizes, right? But still, it happens. Even mentally healthy people get like that sometimes. You get overstimulated, Kids are a lot. I hear. I don't have any because I've heard that they're a lot. We're really gonna kind of veer away from canon here for a minute and start cornplating. But Mongoose made this great point about the 4 Heart scene. Jazz comes in, she sees Shane upset. She hears him talk about how he's going to kill himself, and she runs away crying. And in that situation, apparently, you would normally expect a child to stick around, ask questions, try to comfort this person. They would be confused. They would seek reassurance. But Jazz doesn't. She runs away. Shane is not the kind of person that she turns to for comfort and reassurance. And she's not confused about what he means when he says, hopefully I won't be around much longer. She understands what he means by that because it's not the first time she's heard it. So I think that at the start of his arc, at least, their relationship isn't great. Shane describes himself as having grown attached to her. I guess I've grown attached to Marnie and Jazz. We're a ragtag bunch, but it kind of feels like a weird family. I never really had much of a family as a kid. But he also says he's grown attached to Marnie's chickens. I've really grown attached to Marnie's chickens. So either Eric doesn't have a very extensive vocabulary and he reused this turn of phrase, or Shane feels the same way about Jazz and Marnie as he does about chickens. Or, third option, maybe Shane has a hard time expressing his feelings, which I think is the most likely. He's not going to be out here walking around being like, I love Jazz, I love Marnie, even at 8 Hearts. He's a casual kind of guy. He's grown attached. Even with you, when he marries you, he's not that kind of guy. The most romantic-y thing that Shane says to you is, I may keep to myself a lot, and I may seem unhappy sometimes, but I do appreciate all the work you do. I'm a lucky guy. Which is still pretty casual. If you want words of affirmation, just go marry Elliot, right? Leave Shane for the real ones. So I could take this line about having grown attached to them and all the stuff I said before and use it to paint this picture of them having a bad relationship. But I think he just struggles to put things into words. He struggles to be a caregiver. Like we said before, he swore he would never have a kid. So obviously he's not got this strong paternal instinct in him that can just guide his actions. It's hard for him. It doesn't come naturally. But we can see how much he cares about her from things other than his dialogue. First, you've got the very fact that he moved to the valley for her. He took her into his care. He made this big change for her. He put his life on hold. He could have dumped her with Marnie and fucked off. He could have let her go into the system. He could have done a million things other than stuck around for her. Secondly, you've got his 7 Heart scene, part 1. At this point, Shane has stopped drinking so much. He's working on taking things more seriously. He's got a bit of spending money because he's not buying as much beer. And what does he do? What is the first thing he does when he has a bit of extra cash? He buys Jazz a present. Real bunny jewel slippers. She says they're so expensive and she asks him how he can afford them. So he obviously puts some money into these things. And clearly money is so much of an issue for him normally that even Jazz knows about it. You know, she's like, how could you afford this? But the first thing he does when he has any kind of disposable income is buy her this present that she loves. It's very cute. It's very, 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 very cute. And then we have the 8-heart scene. Jazz refers to Shane in this scene as Uncle Shane. As far as I can tell, this is the only time that Jazz refers to him this way, which I think represents a reparation in their relationship. As a kid, if you call an adult by their first name, that's like weird, right? I don't know. I mean, it depends on the culture and the context. But for me, I would call my aunts and uncles Auntie X, Uncle Y. And I still kind of do to this day. But Jazz calls him Shane. Shane's gone a lot. Did you know Shane's my godfather? And here in the 8-heart scene, after we've seen the 7-heart scene where he was trying to repair their relationship, he was reaching out to her, she calls him Uncle Shane, which I think shows that he succeeded. And we also have the content of the 8-heart scene, the blue chickens. The blue chickens, his iconic blue chickens. That's for her, my special blue hens. I've been raising them in secret for the last few months. I won't be living here forever, and I wanted to pass something on to Jazz. I've been teaching her how to care for them. I want to feel like I'm not just a leech on the world. I want to contribute somehow, even in a small way like this. And we can tie this into the other stuff we were saying too, about feeling like a burden. He wants to contribute, and he wants to do it through her. To her. He wants to contribute to her. My heart. In his 6-heart scene, when he asks you why he shouldn't just roll off the cliff, you can answer, Jazz needs you. You're like a father to her. And Shane responds, you're right, Jazz. Ugh, God, I'm a horrible, selfish person. Now I feel even worse. I'm not doing the hiccuping sounds. I'm not going to do the burp sounds either. Not, this isn't Rick and Morty. So this is that idea I talked about earlier of being in this bad place and everyone who cares about you is now just this huge weight on top of you. Reminding him of this little girl he has in his life makes him feel worse, like she's a responsibility he wants to avoid. Like because she's in his life, he's not allowed to feel the way that he's feeling. You can't blame him for kind of resenting her a little bit. If my theories are correct and she is the kind of catalyst for all of this change in his life, it's not her fault. Of course, it's not her fault, but that's not how the human mind works. But we can see that part of his idea of trying to get his life together, part of his idea of taking things more seriously is repairing this relationship, showing his appreciation for her in the form of a gift, showing her that he knows her by getting her something that she loves. Raising these blue hens is something to pass on to her. We can see the blue hens almost like an allegory for Jazz, because here's this thing he's successfully cared for, almost like a practice run, like how having a dog is like a taste of the responsibility of having a child. Shane says that you and the other hens are going to keep me upright from now on. I know it. And come on, literally right after he says that he's going to be passing the hens on to Jazz. So how can they be keeping him upright if he doesn't even have them, if he's given them to her, right? No, because what he means is that Jazz is going to be the one keeping him upright. Yeah, the hens represent Jazz. So do you see the nuance? I'm absolutely not saying that they have a bad relationship. I'm saying they have a normal, realistic relationship where the trauma that brought them together also affects them. But he takes these steps. He takes responsibility. He nurtures the relationship between them. Dad Shane. Dad Shane. Dad Shane. All right, we're going to take a break for a little while from the big topics and talk about something a little lighter. Emily. Emily is the only other person, apart from Jazz and Marnie, that Shane has an established relationship with. The guidebook specifically lists them as friends, and we see them interact 4 times. That's quite a lot. I got a refill. The first time we see them interact is at the flower dance, where they dance together. No dialogue about each other, nothing like that, just dancing together. The second time is during Clint's 3-heart event. Out of artistic integrity, I have to do this. I put him like here. Yeah, maybe down a bit. I'll put him here. There we go. I had to reprint him. All of the other ones, like Emily is the same one from the Emily video, but at the end of the Emily video, I took Clint, I screwed him up, and I threw him. And then I just threw him away because he was all screwed up, so I had to reprint him for this. The third time we see them interact is Emily's 8-heart event, and the fourth time is Shane's 7-heart event, part 2. So we will go through these instances. Clint's 3-heart event I already talked about in my Emily video, but I will talk about it again because that was a year ago. Clint is telling the player about how, he's so bad with women, he's a good guy once you get to know him, etc. Emily comes over to take his order and he completely fumbles the bag. Huge L for Clint. And then we see Emily go over to Shane and they have this interaction. Hi Shane, here's your beverage. Thanks Emily. So how's your shift coming along? It's fine. Thanks for asking, Shane. Do you have any new chicken stories for me? Clint watches this, then sighs and says, I'm doomed. And I love this. I love this because Clint is just watching Emily and Shane interact. Watching Shane talk to her like a normal human being and being like, God, I wish that was me. Shane literally has zero riz in this situation. He just asks her, how is your shift going? The most basic of questions. And Clint's like, what? He's asking about her life and her experiences? Inconceivable. Fuck nuance. I'm a Clint hater for life. Hate this guy. It's kind of like how we talked about in part 1 when we talked about the festivals. How you talk to this man about chickens and suddenly it's like he's a different person. Emily specifically brings up chicken stories, so we can kind of assume that that's what he's talked to her about previously. You know, she says any new chicken stories, which implies the existence of old chicken stories. So it's not necessarily the deepest friendship, but he's got a friend. This guy, Mr. Go Away. He has a friend. It's a green flag, but it makes sense that it would be Emily, the person he has to see every night in order to procure beer, who is also this huge extrovert who loves taking people under her wing. She has a line, there's good people in this town who just can't seem to find happiness. It makes me sad. Working in the saloon, I hear firsthand about everyone's problems. I got a comment that haunts me to this day that was like, when I talk to Emily in the game now, I hear everything she says in your like Emily voice. And I feel like people get that a lot. So I'm sorry that they're all British now. The only one that I'm not sorry about is Elliot, because I think that everything he says should be said like this. You can take this statement as about Clint or about Shane or about both. But either way, she's got this spirit of like wanting to spread positive energy. We can see this summed up with this quote of hers. There's so many invisible barriers holding us back. Why can't people learn to let go and celebrate freedom? Me? Well, you know what they say. You can't cage a wild Junimo. So she's saying, I wish people could do this thing that I already do. In the Emily video, I go into this heavy styles, but she's a person who's gone through a lot of personal growth, and now she's seeing people unhappy and she wants to kind of like mentor them almost. Like how she takes the parrot into her care in her 4-heart scene, she kind of takes other injured birds, like Shane and Clint, under her wing as well. And we see this further in her 8-heart scene. So Emily's 8-heart scene is something called clothing therapy, and this is how she describes it. So many of us are struggling with personal issues, things holding us back from living how we want. It's important to me that everyone has a free and happy life, so I came up with a new kind of therapy to help people achieve that. It's based on the amazing power of self-expression. Self-expression is a wonderful healing tool. Did you know that? Behind this curtain you'll find racks and racks of clothes. There's endless options to choose from. Your job is simple. Find the outfit that truly speaks to you and put it on. Feel confident in yourself and your choice. You all have a unique style to share with the world. And she makes Shane go first. He freaks out a little, but he says okay, and then goes for it. And he comes out as the iconic, show-stopping Punk Shane. I was gonna print him out, but I forgot. Sorry. I don't want to get my cricket out. It's fucking ball-ache. Anyway, here he is. We all know him, we love him. Punk Shane. Shane, it's a new side of you we've never known about. That's great. Now go outside with confidence and show the world. Shane says, sure. So this reinforces this idea of Emily as someone who like wants to help him, not in a patronizing way, but like to genuinely help him. Shane is this guy who is in a shell, so she's encouraging his self-expression, for him to take something inside him and show it on the outside the shell. And he does. He doesn't complain. He doesn't say, Emily, this is dumb, I'm not doing that. He just does it. Unlike Clint, who is weird about it. But I don't want to talk about Clint anymore, okay? He won't come up again. Shane just does it. And that's a friend. Going along with whatever kooky schemes his buddy's cooking up. He's a ride or die motherfucker. And Punk Shane ties into his backstory. You see, it all connects. There's not too much to say here, and I did mention this in part 1, but basically a lot of people headcanon that this is how Shane would dress if he weren't depressed. Like before he started just throwing on the same stained hoodie every day, he would dress like this, right? Emily does refer to this as a new side to him, but it could just be like new to her. And I think this makes sense. This is not my scene, so disclaimer there, but from the outside, it seems like a lot of punk or metal or alternative music is about pain and loneliness and feeling different to the people around you. We went through that with Numb by Linkin Park. Like, screamo as a genre. There's a reason that they're screaming, right? When words fail, you sing. When singing fails, you scream. If you look at someone's Shane playlist, I guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, it will have at least one 9 Inch Nails song on there. So like I said, this isn't my scene, but I know there are a lot of absolutely rabid Punk Shane enjoyers. So I consulted some of them during my research, and I learned a lot. Because I was like, what is the appeal? Why would he be into this kind of music? What's the big deal about Punk Shane? The answers I got kind of made me introspect, to say the least. Because it's like, so this is what I was told. Dressing alternative, you get a lot of shit for it. It's a statement. You're going against the grain. And people don't like that. People resent you. And so to have that, and then to keep dressing that way, if anything, to go even harder, to be like, fuck you, it's brave. It's bold. And my response to this was like, I cannot wrap my head around that as a mentality. Having someone make fun of your clothes and then hamming it up even more just to piss them off. Inconceivable. I grew up trying to conform as much as humanly possible. Even when I did anything rebellious, that was just me trying to fit in. The idea of not lying there every single night, worrying about what people think of you, that is foreign to me. And so I guess I see the appeal of Punk Shane because I see the appeal of Shane. I said in part 1 how I wish I was like him. I want to be like him. I wish I didn't care what people thought of me. And it's the same principle here. He's kind of conformed... Wait, why is Emily still up there? Never mind. He's kind of conformed in terms of clothing now, you know, just like with the hoodie. Probably just due to lack of effort or inability to express himself. But he's still got that punk kind of spirit, right? Like, I'm just going to be authentic and you're going to have to deal with that. And then the Punk Shane enjoyers were also overwhelmingly just like, leather is hot. Imagining Shane with spikes and leather and heavy eyeliner is hot, right? So a big part of it is also just what you think is hot, I guess. Doesn't do it for me personally, but each to their own. I appreciate Punk Shane for his candor. Also, he is kind of sexy, to be fair. So if we return to Emily as the subject, I already mentioned his 7 Heart scene where he's making that advert, and Emily and Clint are the 2 people he's roped in to be actors. Where did he go? I gotta stop throwing this guy. No, never. Have I actually lost him? He was under the chair. Like I said, we'll go over this scene more in the next video, but there's not really anything to tell us about any relationships in this scene. You could argue that Shane and Clint are friends because they're in 3 heart events together and because he gets him to be in the Joja Cola advert. But like... Shane is definitely friends with Emily, and Emily probably just got Clint to do it, right? In this heart event, Shane just kind of directs them. There's not any like back and forth like conversation. And in the other 2 heart events they're in together, they don't even talk to each other. So I don't think they're friends. I just think they have Emily in common. It's up to you though. If you insist upon Clint being in your canon, then that's fine. I don't know why you would want to do that. Weird move, but okay. I can't see... I'm probably going to have to use this next video. I really wanted to just screw him up and throw him again. I don't want to waste paper. Ugh, Clint. Oh, Sam's too high up. Oh, I don't care, it's fine. He's tall, you know, he's probably used to that. Okay, finally on our list of relationships, we have his co-workers at JojaMart, Sam and Morris. There is no data here. Sam and Shane do not have a single line of dialogue about each other, and they never interact. It's the same with Morris and Shane. They all just work at JojaMart. That's it. We can speculate, of course. I mentioned this in my Sam video, but there are loads of fan comics and fan art about Sam and Shane and their like hijinks. If you're not following JojaMart mockumentary, what are you doing with your life? But yeah, no, there's nothing. I don't know what to put here. I just needed to put them in here as his co-workers, you know, for thoroughness. I have read smart about these pairings because, of course, I have. Have I written it? Maybe. Yes. All right, we're gonna add our relationship headcanons to the board. I've run out of magnets. All right, beautiful. So, look at what we've got here. This is my personal interpretation of Shane's backstory. Just kidding, I can't copyright that. I'll get sued. We can see the path of his life. We can see the emotional through line. Let's recap. Should I try and put them into some kind of timeline? Oh, yeah. Should we do it? Okay. So Shane grew up in the city, lived in the city for most of his life, assuming that this is Zuzu City. He came to visit Pelican Town at least once during this time. Presumably he came to stay with Marnie for the summer or something, because Marnie is his aunt, and he never really had much of a family because of his hard childhood. Okay. He played grid ball in high school, potentially could have gone pro, but he had an injury or something. Or maybe it was a confidence thing, you know, even at that point in his life, he just didn't go for things. You know, his line about not trying anymore, maybe even at 18 he felt that way. I don't know. But then there's a kind of question mark period in which he was made Jazz's godfather. Maybe he worked at the TV industry, maybe he was a sports analyst, maybe he did chicken stuff. We don't know. But we know that he had these two friends. But then he came to Pelican Town with Jazz roughly 5 years ago. I do think that that's a big chunk of time, and it's quite different from what it says in canon that it's only been a few months. But this shit isn't real. I can do what I want. I think it makes more sense. When I write fan fiction, I don't tend to write it 5 years. I tend to make it 2 or 3 years that he's been living in Pelican Town. But my fan fiction Shane and my Shane that exists in my head as canon are two different beasts. I can't explain it. You know I love my accuracy, I love my thoroughness, but when it comes to fan fiction, I'm a lot less strict. Yeah, there's a lot more wiggle room, but you better not write him with a fucking polo or I'll lose my shit. And then, yeah, he had his debts. He moved in with Marnie. This is kind of an in-between. I don't know where this one's supposed to go. Yeah, I can't really put these into an order. That was kind of the point, but I'm trying, I guess. 5 years ago-ish. There we go. This is the best I can do. So, as I've said, this is my Shane backstory. There we go. Sneaky Taylor Swift reference in there. So I want to kind of explain where I'm coming from in continuously repeating to you, emphasizing that this is my interpretation. I do this in every video because I just always kind of had the feeling I should. But since I've been on Tumblr and I've been more into fandom discourse, I think I kind of understand how to put it into words better. Because you've got canon, right? The text. And then you've got fanon, which is stuff that's not canon, but is widely accepted by a lot of fans. For example, in a fanfiction, I saw someone refer to the wizard from Stardew Valley as Magnus, and I was like, oh, he has a first name, but it's not from the game. We know that his name is M. Rasmodius, but him being called Magnus is a fanon thing. The Shane Short King accusations could also be considered a fanon thing, because as we established in part 1, there is no real basis for this in the game. He is average height. Another Fanon thing is that he's like kind of chubby or like plus size. If you look at Shane fan art, oh, I've got loads actually. If you look at Shane fan art, I would say, just from my observations, it's about a 50-50 split of him being like straight sized or plus sized. But there's no real basis for this in the text except for a line he says where he says he's gaining weight, and then another line where he says he's losing weight. And he also says that he's out of shape, but like a lot of skinny people are out of shape, you know. But some people out there will have you believe that he is canonically short and he is canonically chubby. And if you write him or draw him in a different way, they will get mad at you. And I know this is kind of ironic because I am out here being like, if you write or draw him in a polo, I will kill myself in front of you to change the trajectory of your life. But that is why I also repeat a million times that that's my interpretation and that it's not that deep. I saw this post on Tumblr that kind of sums up my point of view, so I'll just read it to you. Not only my reading of canon is correct, or interpretations are subjective and all valid, but a secret third thing. More than one interpretation can be valid, but there's a reason your English teacher had you cite quotes and examples in your papers, and you have to have a strong argument that your interpretation is actually supported by the text, or it is just wrong, and I'm fine with telling you it's wrong, actually. If the text says the curtains are blue, you can argue about what that means, but if you're going to claim they're actually yellow, you'd better have a really good argument. So you've probably seen my Shane video part 1. You saw me argue for 45 minutes that this is a jersey, not a polo. If you want to come at me with a 45-minute presentation that it's actually a polo and not a jersey, I welcome that. I would love that. You can't, because the evidence doesn't exist, because it is a tunnelers jersey. But still, so many people comment on that video just saying like, great argument, it's still a polo. And that's fine, I'm not mad at you. Like, I don't just sit there at my desk fuming because someone draws him in a polo. Like, I'm passionate, clearly, but you can do what you want. You have free will. Their comic Shells, which is about Shane and Elliot. See, there we go. They draw Shane in a polo. And I'm pretty sure that on Discord, she apologized to me for that after the Shane video came out. And she said to me, like, it's just easier. And that's fine. I can still appreciate many things about this image, even though he's wearing a polo. Look at the glasses. Glasses, Shane. But some people will get so pressed about this kind of thing. And it's like, I'm begging you to make an actual argument. If you believe something so strongly, don't just go into the messages of someone who draws him wrong and complain. Make a case for it. Why do you think I started this YouTube channel? It was to spread gridball jersey propaganda. So this is kind of my conclusion here. I was going to do a whole section here on headcanons. Like, I've got my hat ready and everything. But yeah, I was going to include different people's headcanons. But like, truly, isn't the joy of a headcanon coming up with it yourself? Or, you know, discovering other people's? I had a few I was going to talk about. So, for example, if we look at Secret Night number 11, I've heard the headcanon that this isn't jazz, that this is Shane. Oh. And because it's like girl-coded, you know, there's like the pink bow. Some people headcanon that Shane is trans and this is him as a child, you know, pre-transition, assigned female at birth. And I love that. I think that's so creative, right? That's so interesting. And you could build an entirely different timeline based on that headcanon, right? Because I think that that's jazz, so it's 5 years ago. But if that's Shane, then this is like 30 years ago, right? It blows everything up. But I don't want to take that headcanon and like analyze it, right? Because that's not the point. If I made a case either way, either for that theory or against it, if I stood here and I tried to like break it apart, would that not kind of ruin it? That's not what it's for, right? Like, that's not the point of a headcanon. It's in the name. Head's canon. It's the canon that exists in your head. This is the Fiona Sangster cinematic universe, right? These are my headcanons in my head. So, I ask you, what's in yours? I've tried to present all the pieces, you know, give you all the facts, so that you can kind of put them together how you want. I changed my interpretation of his backstory all the time, if I'm being honest. It's different in at least 3 of my fanfictions. So I've made some cases here, I've made some arguments, I've backed them up, we've analysed some stuff, but this is not gospel. So maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. Maybe your headcanons will just be my headcanons, right? But don't forget the love of the game. Not Stardew Valley, the game. The headcanon game, because there's so much joy to be found in creating your own interpretations. I don't want to just suck all the fun out of it and tell you what to think. You're your own person. You have free will. Half of the shit I think about Shane comes from my own experience. So why would you need to stick to that? All right. We have reached the end of the deepest dive into Shane from Stardew Valley Part 2 backstory. Sorry this one took so long after Part 1. Clearly, I found it quite overwhelming and could not pick out a lot of good information. So yeah, this is kind of what I settled on, of drowning my inner perfectionist, letting it exist as like imperfect, hazy, diffuse, throwing a fact on the ground. That's character growth for me. If you don't know, I have started making gameplay videos, and they are available exclusively on my Patreon and my YouTube memberships. Currently it's me playing through the Yandere Shane mod, where Shane is, it's quite intense. It's a Yandere basically. And I put one of those out every week or every other week. So if you could sign up for that, that would be really cool. Sponsorships are pretty dry at the moment, so I would really appreciate it. Maybe like the video, maybe subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for 40,000 subscribers. I don't film myself doing this very much. I keep forgetting that I'm a YouTuber. And then people like say it on Discord and I'm like, oh, what the fuck? Anyway, thank you for watching. It's been hard to write Shane fanfiction while he's been staring at me from this wall. Not impossible, but I do feel judged. All right, I hope that you have a good day. Stay classy, Shaniacs. Please write him in a jersey or I'll come for you. Okay. Bye.